What I have now is a Word document with 30 questions, just like this one, or this one. Before even touching Storyline, it's important to figure out what I want to do and make a plan. I have several categories that I need to set up for this quiz. There are 6 categories in total, and each category has 5 questions in it. That's a lot, but the user won't have to answer all 30 questions. I'll just select 10 random questions, making sure to select at least one from each category. The user will have to answer 80% of the questions correctly in order to pass, so they need at least 8 questions with correct answers. If you want to follow along but don't have any questions ready, just feed this prompt to your favorite AI assistant and it should give you something similar to what I have. I could begin by making a multiple choice graded question and a multiple response graded question, and just duplicate these around until I get my 30 questions, then replace the text and adjust the number of answers. But that's gonna take me a lot of time. There has to be a better way to do this. And there is. Storyline gives you the option of importing questions from a text file or an Excel file. So on this page, they give you all the necessary explanations as well as 2 templates you can download. The first one is a text file and the other one is an Excel file. Now it depends which one you find easier to use, because to use either of these templates, we'll need to format our questions a bit. For example, this is my question now as it appears in my Word document. It has the question text and the answers under it. And the correct answer is marked like this. If I were to use a text file, my question will have to look like this. First off, I need to specify what type of question it is. If it's a multiple choice like this one, I have to put MC here. If you're confused, use the table in the Storyline documentation to find out which question type you have. Then I need to specify a number of points the user will get if they answer the question correctly. Then comes the question text, then the answers. To show Storyline that this is the correct answer, I need to add an asterisk before the answer like this. And that's all the formatting I need to do. If you have, for example, feedback that's specific to each answer, you can write it like this. Anything to the right of this line will be placed on a feedback layer after importing the question into Storyline. What I recommend doing is to scan your text to make sure you're not using this character for the name of a brand or product or something, because this line will cut your word in two and place the second half on a feedback layer, and you don't want that. You can maybe replace this character with something else and add the line later after importing this into Storyline. So anyway, if I'm using the Excel template, the question will have to be formatted like this. So it's a bit different looking, but it follows the same principle. These double forward slashes are used to mark comments, so they won't be read by the code. It's just like in JavaScript, for example. So the code used by Storyline to import the question won't read the text that comes after the double forward slashes. So I'm going to use the text file format. I'm going to create a new document in Notepad and copy all of this here. Then I'm going to save as a .txt file. Important tip here, if you're using French or other languages that have special characters and your imports look like this, when you save, click Save As, open the options here, and just play around with the encoding types, see which one works when you import. Now that our template is ready, we can import it into our Storyline project. If I go to Storyline now and go to File, Import, Questions from File, I can select the template with all my questions and import it into Storyline. I'm gonna get this window here, which allows me to either import all the questions or select specific ones. I can also change the scene I'm importing to. So I'm gonna import these into a new scene, which will be named like my file name. If you get some kind of error here while importing, make sure to check this number here because that's the line the error is on. It might be difficult to do this in Notepad, but opening the text file with a code editor will allow you to see line numbers and quickly fix your error. After which you can just re-import. You can click retry here and it should work. So we successfully imported our questions into Storyline, but they look very boring right now, just black text on a white background. So to change this, I need to set up a design template before we actually import the questions. To start off, I'm going to copy one multiple choice question and one multiple response question to this scene and delete all the other questions. We'll import these later. And now I need to set up a template that affects all of the questions I'm going to import. I'm going to click on the View tab here and open the slide master. And if I look here, I can see that I have a question slide template that's being used by 2 questions. So this is what I'll need to edit so that my changes are automatically applied to all of the questions. The question title box is where my question text will be, and the question choice box is where my answers will be. I'm going to resize them like this so they are on the left side of the screen. That's because I'm going to add some stuff to the right side of the screen later on, but we don't have to worry about that for now. Then I'm going to add a background by right-clicking on the slide and choosing Format Background. And I'm going to select a solid fill color that I like. I'm going to change the text color of this box to white so that it's visible against my dark background. And for the answers, I'm not going to change anything, but I'll add this backdrop and send it to the back. I like doing this because it visually separates the questions from the answers. Then I'm going to right click on this text box here and change its vertical alignment to bottom and tick this shrink text on overflow option. Doing this on the slide master will ensure that no matter how long my question text is, it will always fit the text box. If I close this now and check the questions I copied over, I can see that only a few of my changes were registered. The position of the boxes, however, is just as it was initially. The position of the question and answer boxes will only change when I re-import the questions into Storyline. So I'm going to go to File, Import, Questions from File, and import the first and third questions only. And now if I check the slides, the position will be the same as on the slide master. I'm gonna go to my slide master here and make this prettier, maybe make it white and change the shape to a rounded rectangle and also remove the outline. Nice, it looks better. If I close this and go to my slides, the changes have been pushed through. Now there's only one thing that bugs me about these, and it's the distance between the radio button and the text. I don't like it. Even if my quiz is the most beautiful quiz ever, having this looks like I just threw in some text in there. So I want to change it. But how? I could indent like this, then go to the format painter and copy this for what? All of my 30 questions? Yeah, that's not a good plan. I could also change the type of radio button. This small one gives us more space, but this button is way too small for me. Now there is a better way. What I'm gonna do here is select an answer, go to the styles pane and add a new style. I'm gonna rename this style answers, and it's gonna be based on the normal text style, which is the default paragraph style. Now I'm gonna add an indentation and go to the styles pane, click on the arrow here and select update style from selection. Now if I manually apply this style to the answers, they are all gonna have an indentation. And I can change the text however I want. For example, I can apply a bold here, then update style from selection, and now all of my text boxes that share this style will update too. Now don't worry, we're not gonna apply this style manually to all of our answers. We'll come back to that. For now, let's focus on this radio button here. I want to make it orange. You can also change the format of the answer box from here if you want. I won't. If you want to leave it as is, but want to only change the color of the hover state, you can do that by going to the Design tab, clicking on colors and editing the theme colors. I'm gonna select create new theme colors here, and the color we can edit to change only this hover effect is Control 1. So if I change this to orange and then click OK, this will change the highlight color throughout my project, including here on the hover state. But I'm just gonna leave it as the default blue. Now I like these changes I made, but imagine doing that for all of my answers. Fortunately, I don't have to do that. If I like this style, I can set this as the default radio button by right-clicking the box and selecting Set as Default Radio Button. This will cause all the radio buttons in my project to look like this one. I'm gonna repeat the process for my checkboxes as well to have a consistent look. So change the color of the text box, change the text style, right-click, set as the default checkbox. To see how this impacts our questions, we're gonna have to re-import our quiz. There you go. Now all our answers share a consistent style. I'm gonna theme it even more by adding a nice picture, add a satellite here, and add a black shape that I'll later use to display some information. But for now, if I import all of my questions, you can see that they all have a similar style. And you know what? I'm gonna change the font of the answers to one I like more. So click Style pane, update style from selection, and if I wait a bit, all my answers will change fonts. Now, let's say you import the questions and realize that this white box is too large, like I did. No problem, you can just edit it. But if I try to move the question and answers so that they're more centered on the page, I will have to re-import the questions. Cool, I think our design is done. Now I need to divide these questions up into categories. I'm gonna need 6 categories with 5 questions each. To do that, I'm gonna go into Story View and click on the Question Bank button here and click on Manage Question Banks. Click here to create a new question bank. I'm gonna create 6 of them. And once I'm done, I'm gonna double click the first one to open it and click on Import Questions, either here or here. And this dialog will open up, and we'll use this to move questions from our scene, which has all of the 30 questions, into our question bank. And we'll move the first 5 questions and click OK. Now I have 5 questions here and 25 questions in my scene here. I'm gonna do the same for the rest of the categories. Go to Story View, select my question bank, import questions. Make sure to select Move Questions into Question Bank. Cool. Now my scene here is empty. I'm gonna rename this scene to Intro since I want a welcome screen for my users. Then I'm gonna right-click, create a new scene and name it Category 1. And I'm gonna do the same thing until I have a scene for each of the 6 categories. Then I'm gonna create a new scene which will be my results scene, and I'm gonna leave it empty for now. Then I'm gonna go to my first scene, click on the question bank and select New Draw from Question Bank. This will actually show my questions in my project. I'm gonna tick this box to draw questions randomly, then select 2 here. This will mean that 2 questions are drawn at random from this question box. I can now delete my empty slide here. I've done the same thing for all 6 categories, and my project now looks like this. Keep in mind that I select 2 questions at random from these categories and only 1 random question from these ones. So the total number of questions for the quiz is gonna be 10. The thing about these questions we're importing is that the shuffle answers options here is by default turned on. If you don't want your answers to be in a random order each time the question pops up, you'll have to manually select none here for all of your slides. You can't turn this off by default, at least as far as I know. The next thing I did was add some graphics, text, and a button to my intro slide, and now I'm gonna create a results slide which will calculate the results for my quiz project. So I'm gonna go to my last scene, the results scene, right click here, add a new slide, results slide. And I'm going to select this basic graded results slide and click on insert slide. Once I do that, this dialog will pop up, which shows all the questions in my project. And I'm going to take all of my categories here and click OK. This means that it will calculate the score for these questions only. That's why I need to select all of my categories, because they are all part of the quiz. And now I'm just gonna work on the design of this slide a bit, move some elements around, delete others. I'm gonna delete everything from the layers. If you delete the score percentage variable and want to add it back, click anywhere in your text box, then go to Insert, Reference, click the built-in tab here to show the default storyline variables, scroll down, and it should look like this. And I'm also gonna add a percentage sign after it. Perfect. I'm gonna end up with something like this. I added a button to restart the course when clicked, so that we can just go to the beginning and try the quiz again. Nice. Now it's time to hook up all of our scenes. I'm gonna go into Story View, click on my intro scene, and change the trigger to jump to the next scene when the next button is clicked. Now, to move from one question bank to another, we need to be in Story View and click on our question bank. Then these triggers will show up in the right side panel. Just change the trigger here to jump to the next scene and you're set. Do the same for all of your scenes with a question bank and you should end up with something like this. If you publish the quiz and test it, you have a functional standalone quiz. Awesome. But there's more we can do with this. I left this empty box here because I want to add some progression trackers to let the user know a few things when they go through the quiz. Things such as, what's the current category? How many categories are there in total? What's the title of the current category? How many questions are there in this category? Which question am I currently on? How many questions are there in total? Which question am I currently on? And we're gonna answer all of these questions with this structure. So I created a text box here and added this inside. So we're gonna make some storyline variables to help us display this information. All of these are storyline number variables I created, except for this one, which is a storyline text variable. The category numbers we will track by using the number of scenes we have in our project. I'm going to create a trigger that, when the timeline starts, makes this variable equal to project.scene number, and this one equal to project.total scenes. If you're having trouble finding the built-in variables, this is how you do it. You have to click here, then click on the project tab, and all the variables I'm referencing are here. So if we were to preview this right now, this is what it would display. That's because the scene number for the first category is 2, because it's the second scene in my lineup. And there are 8 total scenes in this project, 6 categories, plus my intro scene and my results scene. So this is not what I want. It should display 1 and 6, because this is the first of 6 categories. So I'm going to create an execute JavaScript trigger that runs when the timeline starts, and use this code to get the variables to display what I want. First off, I'm getting the variables from storyline into their JavaScript equivalents. Then I've defined 2 variables here. The first one is to show how many scenes there are in the project besides our quiz categories. It's set to 2 because we have the intro scene and the results scene. And the second variable is to show how many scenes there are that come before this category, this first category. In our case, we have the intro scene. I've done it like this so that I don't have numbers throughout my code, because it can be a pain to look for them if I ever decide to change the number of scenes in my project. Okay, so now I need to subtract this variable from our current scene number so that we get our scene to be the first category. And then we need to subtract the other scenes from the total scenes to get only the number of quiz categories. And the last thing is, of course, to push these variables back into storyline. Now let's work on displaying the category name. I'm gonna get my variable from storyline, then I'm gonna define an array called category names. I will use this to store all of my category names. It's important to look up the syntax of the array elements. I have the category names between quotes and they are separated with commas. So what's an array, you ask? Well, it's just a way for us to store a bunch of elements in an orderly fashion. Think of it like having those pill organizers. It's a way to store pills. If I ever need to get a pill, I just open the relevant container. If I ever have to get an element from the array, I'm just gonna use an index to know which container to open. So array indices start at 0. So for my first category, I will need to get the element at index 0, and I'm gonna have to get it based on the current scene number. So the category name changes when the scene number changes. But my scene number currently starts at 1. I will need to subtract 1 from this in order for my index to start at 0. And then I need to push the variable back into storyline. Now, what about these two? Well, we won't even have to use JavaScript for this ones. Just insert a reference to scene.slideNumber and scene.totalSlides. Easy. Let's move along to this section. We're gonna do the same thing we did for our scenes. So let's set up some triggers to change this to project slide number and this one to project.totalSlides. I'm gonna first get the variables from storyline. Then I'm gonna define two variables for the number of other slides in the project and the slides before the first question. Then I'm just gonna subtract the numbers to give you the current question number and the total questions in our question banks. And then just push the variables back into storyline. Before testing, just make sure that the execute JavaScript trigger is always set to run last, so that we set our variables first and then manipulate them, not the other way around. And well, look at this, it all works perfectly. We got category names, we got slide counters, we got scene counters, everything works just like we want it to. Thank you for following along. I hope this project proves helpful to you. Thank you for watching.